Hello everyone, welcome back to the show. Today I actually want to talk about something that happened over the weekend. So, as we all know, Israel was attacked over the weekend, and granted, there were no casualties really on either side. I believe there was one 7-year-old girl that got killed in one of the rockets, but 99% of those rockets were deflected and were they did not make it to their targets, which is kind of embarrassing considering how much money the Iranians get from us every year. Our tax dollars went to make those missiles, by the way. So, as we all know, I try not to get too political on this show, but I feel like today we actually have to talk about politics because it's kind of gritty right now. You have us, the United States, that are funding both sides of the war. We help both militarily sometimes and financially Israel defend herself, as well as ever since the Biden administration came back into office and the Obama administration before him, they were funneling money to the Iranians. I don't remember if some of you are young enough to remember Fast and Furious, where payloads of cash, like physical cash, was being dropped in Iran, or if you remember the severe sanctions we had against them that were lifted under Joe Biden. But I digress. So when I talk about foreign affairs, I come from the position of, as much as I wish the United States could be isolationist, we cannot be. We are the dominant superpower in the world. We are the Roman Empire of our decade, of our generation, of our century. We are the strongest military in the world, and with that comes a responsibility. If it wasn't for us, the Nazis would have rolled over France, Britain, and God knows how the world would be. Now, I'm not saying we won the war, but I'm just saying without our help, through the Lend-Lease Act, through all kinds of other stuff, we have a history of being the world's policeman, and I'm not saying that we should be. Unfortunately, that's just how the world is. And as a result, I have to I disagree with a lot that the Biden administration has said and done over the last 4 years, but today took the cake. They announced that they will not help Israel if Iran continues to escalate the war, which, by the way, we'll get into that in a minute. But going back to my political position on this, I've always considered myself a fan of Teddy Roosevelt, and he's got a slogan that I have ingrained in my brain and will forever ingrain in my brain. Speak softly and carry a big stick, and you will go far. We are the big stick. We tried speaking softly. I mean, with Biden, it was comically that whispering into a microphone, don't. So pathetic. Anyway, the problem I have here is we've helped Israel out through a lot of crap. We've given them jets. Well, I shouldn't say we, but Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Northrop Grumman, they've all, which are American companies, have all helped in some way, shape, or form defend Israel. Even, I think at some point we did actually have some boots on the ground, but it wasn't a military. It's considered like a black op. I'll have to dig into that one. But we've always stood on Israel's side. And now, because of some blue-haired, jobless, fat fucks, we are backing out because it just so happened that this is an election year, and Biden doesn't want to seem too harsh on Iran, because according to these blue-haired soy boys and girls, they believe that by us attacking Iran, we are attacking Palestine, which is them pretty much coming out of the closet saying, yeah, we know that Palestine is a front for Iran. And because all these blue-haired college kids and all that actually think that Hamas are the good guys in current events, they think that Israel is for some reason an apartheid, which If you want to know about apartheid, talk to a black guy that lived in Africa during the 70s and 80s. They'll tell you what a true apartheid was. Or a white farmer that lives in South Africa now. He'll tell you what apartheid is. I could go on. But the point I'm making is because of this backlash, the Biden administration has decided to not aid one of our biggest allies that we've had since the end of World War II. And all because it's an election year, which is absolute bullshit. We've always stood together with Israel. We've always done what needed to be done in the Middle East to defend them. Now, I'm not saying that. I gotta explain myself here, because I'm also a slight isolationist. I believe that if it's not in our problem, if it's not in our states, it's not our problem. But unfortunately, as I started off this conversation with, we are the world's policemen. We are the dominant power, and Israel is the one gleaming beacon of Western civilization that's left in the Middle East. All right, Afghanistan, a shithole. Iraq, a shithole. Iran, a wannabe Muslim empire. Saudi Arabia, oil barons. That I don't know if people remember this or not, but they were the ones that bombed our tower during 9/11. It was a bunch of Saudi Arabians that did that, and yet we went to war with Iraq. I'm not gonna go down that rabbit hole, but I'm just saying the one beacon of westernization of Western culture is Israel in the Middle East. It's an unfortunate truth, but it's a truth. So as a pro-American, I have to be pro-Israel. And I believe that we should be sending them as much support as we possibly can, because unfortunately, there are some events that this is going to kick off. Iran has openly attacked a NATO/UN country, which they are also part of the UN. Now, I have my history degree. It's hanging right there. I studied military history. One of the biggest articles that you should not break of the UN. UN countries should not be attacking each other. Otherwise, NATO is supposed to be activated. Or, I'm sorry, the first steps are sanctions against Iran, which Iran takes sanctions so bad, like they're essentially the emo kid at school. What's another cut gonna do to them? Okay, they're immune to the sanctions at this point. If they're not going to get help if they're not getting our American cash and tax dollars, they'll just get China's, or they'll get Russia's through a backdoor way. North Korea, even, I believe in the past, has sent funding and munitions to Iran. Oddly enough, they're actually helping Russia right now against Ukraine, but we'll get to Ukraine in a minute. So, right now in the House of Representatives, there is a bill that's being passed around about, and it's a bipartisan effort. It's not a Republican, it's not a Democrat thing. Our Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, is actually in the works of completing this bill, and I hope he gets it done. And I don't care. I know the war in Ukraine is going on for 2 years now, and there's no end game. There is no one knows where the line's going to be drawn to when we stop funneling them. But I will say this much. And the only reason I'm bringing this up is because the bill may or may not have, I got some friends of mine that are telling me that it may include some funding to continue the war in Ukraine. Which I would much rather see us aid our allies than Russia gain more territory. All right, we kicked their ass once. Putin's trying to start another Cold War. He's doing a pretty damn good job of it. We're only like, if at this point, if all North Korea needs to do is shoot another cruise missile into South Korean waters, and we might have a world war. Hell, as much posturing as China's done, they might as well attack Taiwan. And then next thing you know, we're in World War III. And it will be a true global world war. It won't just be a European war, because for the first time in, I believe, since World War I, a world war will be fought in the Middle East. Last time that was done, they accused the guy, Lawrence of Arabia, of war crimes. Just because that's what it takes to beat these people. Middle Eastern culture are the pinnacles of guerrilla warfare. They live in a fucking desert. They have nothing but more to live for. And their God has promised them 72 virgins. Of course they'd rather die. Okay, jokes aside, I do want to talk about that UN versus UN situation, because that's going to cause a huge buffer. Buffer is a good word. That's going to cause a huge buffer in NATO right now, because, I mean, how much more sanctioning can they do? And this wasn't like the Houthis attacking oil tankers in the Persian Gulf. This wasn't Hamas bombing, 1,300 Jewish people, which was a tragedy. But they're a terrorist group. They're not supposed to have national boundaries. There's no representative standing in the UN for Iran or for the Houthis, or Hamas. Instead, you have these are pockets of terror organizations that are supposed to be outside the normal culture or outside of a boundary. They are united by their cause. Iran's a country, and it just bombed another country, both that have seats in the UN. I really hope our representatives there, I hate the UN as much as the next red-blooded American, but I hope they can get their head out of their globalist, Green New Deal loving ass to see that this is a problem, and Iran needs to be stopped. Iran should be introduced to napalm tomorrow. I don't wish war, open conflict on anybody. Trust me, I've seen firsthand what it can do to people. No, it's not a good thing. But sometimes a kick in the ass is what's needed. It's about time we start getting more proportional. Thank you, Fat Electrician, for that little phrase. Actually, Ronald Reagan said it before him, but we need a proportional response to Iran. As a NATO needs a proportional response as a group. It can't just be a U.S. thing. It can't just be a France, Britain. I believe Jordan actually is on Israel's side on this point. I think they announced that today because they helped block some of those missiles, because they, as much as they may hate Israel, I think they hate Iran more. So that's a good strong ally to have there if they're going to be an ally. Again, it's only it's only been a couple days after this attack. There's a lot of things in motion that we don't see. There's a lot of things in motion that most politicians aren't even seeing, because the militaries kind of work on their own until they come up with a game plan. Then they tell the politicians, which is the worst idea ever. Look how it worked out for Vietnam. One other thing that this kind of reminds me of is during the interwar period of World War II, World War I, the 20s and 30s, there were all kinds of little conflicts that ended up becoming what World War II became. You had, in the 20s, you had the Nazis rising to power, and then by 1933, Germany's rebuilding their military, breaking treaties, actually going in and politically, not militarily, but politically taking over countries, to which all the European politicians, Chamberlain, what was his name? Molotov, I believe, was one of them. They all just looked at him and said, "Don't stop doing that. We're gonna do things." France's response was to build the Maginot Line, which, look how well that did for them. There's these things called planes. and tanks. They were not prepared for. And you can just see the turmoil that was and then on top of that you had some fascist uprisings in Spain, obviously Mussolini in Italy, the Greek revolutions. The world was already in turmoil long before World War II started as an aftermath of World War I. What we're looking at now is an aftermath of us pulling out of Afghanistan. We showed that we are weak. Biden showed that we are weak. And as a result, Iran's hopping on the opportunity. And it's pathetic. It is truly pathetic. And all I got to say is, boys, I know we all wanted to die in a European country for our nation, but looks like we're going back to the sands. Grab your boots. Thanks, guys.